And my co-leaders know to tell me that all the time because I'll forget. So thank you. So yeah, so I started recording. So everyone, this will be recorded. So be careful what you say. And the recording, we're gonna send it out to everyone. We store it in our YouTube, but we're also gonna send it to the Agile 20 Reflect Festival YouTube site, which I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. So welcome everybody, welcome to the Enterprise Agile Meetup, our community. So our community over the last 3 or so years has morphed, but now we've kind of focused on large companies, enterprises and organizations, and how to do Agile in big companies, right? Because I think it has its own challenges. It's not that we don't think startups and mid-sized companies are important, of course they are. But we kind of focus on the challenges and everything at large enterprises. And so hence that's our focus area. So we like to talk about subjects and topics that lends itself to those areas. So that's kind of what we do. That's our purpose. And we have a pretty large community now. We're in San Francisco. We used to meet together in buildings and everything, but now we meet virtually. And we're trying to think about continuing this even after we all get back to life. Maybe we'll still record this stuff virtually and share with everyone. So we're going to think through that. So that's our community meetup. Let me talk to you a little bit second about Agile 20 Reflect Festival. So a friend of mine in Scotland, Scott, decided to get together with some people and said, well, why don't we create this giant virtual event to celebrate Agile Manifesto 20 years. And they got together with a bunch of people and they have, ambassadors. So Gopal and I are North America ambassadors, and we have basically ambassadors in every major nation or continent in the world. There's going to be over 600 and something events and video recording. It was very interesting to me to learn what people in Africa or certain countries in Africa are doing, certain countries in South America and Asia and China and India and so forth are doing in this Agile space, right? And I found it very interesting that, guess what? They have the same challenges we have here in the United States, right? Is there some differences? Yeah, but it's pretty interesting to hear what's going on in the world. So as we know, Agile is a world thing. Everyone's kind of doing it. I would say almost every major company in the world is doing some form of Agile or Scrum or Safe or Less or something, right? So it's pretty cool that this festival has started. So one of the things we'll do is we'll up a request. So if you haven't gone to Agile 20 Reflect Festival, just Google it. It's the only one out there. Just register, and guess what? You'll get access to these 600 plus video events, and then you can just spend the next 6 months watching these videos. Right? So please do that. There's some exciting things. We have thought leaders like Joanna and everybody else talking, and everyone else has been participative into this. So there's a lot of good events out there that you can participate in, join. So now I'd like to turn this over to my good friend, Gopal. And Gopal is going to introduce our fantastic speaker tonight, Joanna.
Thank you, Jay. I'm really excited today that Joanna is willing to spend her time and share her knowledge nuggets with us. This is an awesome opportunity, and I'm really excited. Those of you who don't know Joanna, I'm sure it's a very small group. She's known as a pragmatic manager. She, she basically takes the theoretical concepts of management and makes them into reality that people can, pick and choose and implement right away, rather than something that is theoretical and it may be useful, it may not be useful. So that's her skill. She has written about 18 management books. And those of you who don't know, she is a nonfiction writer as well. She has written a bunch of nonfiction So if you have not checked out her blogs, she blogs almost multiple times a day, or at least many times a week. The last one that she published today is about how to don't use no as a word, but use no as a sentence. So, very good advice, distilled nuggets that you can go through. In addition to that, she's also a trustee for the Agile 20 Reflect Festival. So she volunteers at time. What I mean, some of the big sellers for her from a book's perspective is this one topic that she's going to talk about that came out of her book, which is from chaos to successful distributed agile teams, which is very relevant to everybody these days because we are remote and we are distributed. Um, so without, I mean, also she has jrothman.com and createadaptablelife.com. Please check out those websites. She puts all of her information in there as well. So without any further ado, Joanna, thank you so much and take it away.
Thank you so much. I am very excited. Let's see if I can share properly. I believe I am. So Jay told me that you can see the upper bar. Yeah, fine. That's just what we're going to do.
Gone.
I am.
It's gone now.
Oh, it's gone now. Okay. All right. So life is good. Life is excellent. Okay. And I can see happy faces. I will look at the chat in a minute when we get started. So I have a question for you. I want to know, how productive do you feel now? This is February of 2021. And if you can go to menti.com and enter this code 32 54 48 3, and you will see a poll that says, I feel much more productive and much less productive. And I would like to see you folks put in how you feel. And if I can see oh God, I really hate this. I'm going to stop this share and then share my other screen so you can see. All right, so you should see the how productive do you feel now? Let me see what the chat says. What was the code again? Let's see if I can go to, if you see that code now, 32 54 48 3, that will do it, David. I still see some people are putting in. Thank you, Ron. Oh, and thank you, Rodrigo. So when you're done with that one, we have another code, if I can. So it looks like 24 people have done this. Let's see. We are close. I'm going to call that close. And if I do this correctly, let me see if I can. Yeah, see, I never quite know how to do this. So how do you feel about remote work? This is a word cloud. So let's see how you feel about remote work. I know it's the feelings kind of thing. Disconnected. I'm not surprised. Flexible. Over meeting. Oh, yes. Yes. Isolated, lonely, free, productive. So I want to let that word cloud continue to go while I actually go back to my my keynote presentation. There. All right. So I'm gonna move everything. Okay. So feel free to continue to put in how you feel. So let me tell you a little bit about my experience with remote work. You can tell by my gray hair, I am seasoned. I have experience. That means I'm also kind of old. I have led and worked with remote people and teams since 1987. That's before we had TCP/IP and FTP. We had TCP/IP and FTP, but it was roll your own. We did not just get it with our computers. We did not just get it with all of our operating systems. And yes, that is totally as much fun as it sounds. So think about when you have to transfer a file now, possibly over slow bandwidth. Yeah, I had exactly those same problems back in 87. I was not happy about that. I started my consulting business in 1994. Yeah, 94. And my experience with clients was that they were starting to offshore and outsource in about 2000 and 2001. And they kept saying, we can just offshore all the stuff that's not interesting. Except it turned out that all of that stuff was interesting for the product and the product development. So while these companies wanted to have experts anywhere in the world, their experience back in 2000 and 2001 was not that helpful. In fact, one of my clients, I think in about 2006 or 7, actually said, "Why can't I hire anybody anywhere in the world?" That was his question. And the answer is, you can't quite do it now because you need enough hours of overlap. I'm going to talk about that one. So a lot of, at the time in the early 2000s, a lot of the C-level executives wanted to save money. They thought that remote work would save them money, not exactly what they experienced. So even by 2011, fewer than half of all Agile teams were co-located. So Scott Ambler had this survey. This is in 2011. Co-location was only 47%. And yet at the same time, the Agile Manifesto in 2000 was saying face-to-face is the best way. I really like face-to-face. In fact, when Ron got on, I actually said, it's nice to see you in real time, because he and I have known each other forever, maybe not quite forever, a long time. And we don't see each other in real time all that often. So the real time part of it is really important versus the face-to-face. So, and you might know about Automatic, who makes the WordPress software that I use. There are several other companies that are remote first by design. So remote has been coming all along, and with the pandemic, we are totally here. So I found that when we first had the pandemic, people said, oh, we're going to get back to something. So, and I think that we all realize that now in 2021, this is only February, we will be dispersed for at least several months longer than we are now, and probably longer than that. So think about, this is the enterprise Agile group, right? You probably have teams in across Asia, possibly in the Middle East, certainly across Europe. With any luck, you have teams in Africa, you have teams in North America. With any luck, you have teams in South America, Central America. You have teams everywhere. You are not going to be able to get those people together for a very long time. That's going to depend on everybody having their vaccines and us having the ability to safely travel. So to be honest, we need vaccines everywhere in the world, or no travel is safe for some level of safe. So I am predicting God, yeah, I'm not very good at prediction, but I will predict this, that very few companies, especially the larger companies, will have everybody back in the office this year. And a lot of organizations are really planning on staying dispersed. So you'll notice that I'm using the term dispersed, not distributed. So dispersed is when everybody is away from the office. This is what we have now. We have dispersed teams. So we still work in teams, but everybody is dispersed. So my question is, how can we possibly optimize for going forward? We're not going to go back, right? That genie is out of the bottle. I'm not sure anybody, Jay, you said that you're in San Francisco. I mean, the traffic in San Francisco, anywhere up and down California is always horrible. Why would you want to go back to the office if you can work at least some of the time in your home office, assuming it's set up right? So let me talk about what people want and need from work, and then what companies want and need from work. So people want work that means something with outcomes. People want autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That they can get that with collaboration, especially in agile teams. What I have found is that people want to work on products that customers want. So all of this is about outcomes and collaboration. And what companies want and need is that they want to create a product that serves a need that's based on outcomes, that they want effective teams who can create those products. That's what we're going to talk about, and acquire and retain customers with those products. Again, outcomes. So I'm not talking about, and do not ever say that I said this, because this is not what I mean. I am not talking about returning value to the shareholders. That is not what any company is there for. Companies are all about innovation. Successful companies innovate at all levels so that they can create the products that people want to buy. And the way they do that is with principles. Agile principles work. The principles I'm going to talk about tonight work for your remote teams. So how can we achieve these results? And when I think about creating outcomes, I think about this notion of pervasive communication to understand the work and its meaning. I'm not sure how many, a bunch of you said overly meaninged in the Menti word cloud. And I find that we might not need all that many meetings, but we need communication, because that communication allows us to collaborate. So I'm probably going to ad lib a little bit about asynchronous communication while I'm here tonight, because I find that the more we can do with asynchronous communication to prepare for our meetings, the fewer meetings we actually need. Okay, we also need a project rhythm to verify that we're on track. I happen to much prefer flow-based approaches with distributed teams rather than an iteration-based approach. I don't actually care what you use as long as we have a cadence of a rhythm that allows us to succeed. And that this notion of sufficient transparency that allows us to create outcomes that actually work for the people and the customers, right? For everybody. So I'm going to talk about hours of overlap, good intention, working together, team resilience, and freedom to learn early. That's how we can deliver those outcomes. So these are the principles, not practices, right? I'm not going to talk about specifically practices. If you ask me how to do iteration planning, I will be happy to offer you my opinion based on your context later. But I'm going to talk about these principles in this talk. So the first principle is establish acceptable hours of overlap. When Mark Kilby and I were writing this book, From Chaos to Successful Distributed Agile Teams, I said to him, I don't see how we can have an agile team with even 3 hours of overlap. It's just not enough time. He said to me, my experience is we need a minimum of 4. And then we had a discussion. What if you have more than 8 hours of overlap where people keep working in the evening or early in the morning? So what we recommend is that you visualize when people can collaborate and that you might need to change this chart. So let me talk through this little chart here. This is a dispersed team that is in the same time zone. So notice this is not about time zones. This is about hours of collaboration, hours of overlap. So Dave, Fred, Sandra, and Trudy are all in the Boston area. They are working from home. Sam and Mindy are in New Hampshire, and Indianapolis is still in the Eastern time zone. Polly, the product owner, is there. So Dave is the manager. He is busy every day from 2 to 4 in the afternoon. Polly has other commitments from noon to 2. So they are not available. If you look at the hours of overlap where the team is available 100%, you can see 10 and 11, those 2 hours, and again at 4 in the afternoon for an hour. Now, 3 in the afternoon is not bad. 9 in the morning isn't bad, but it's not 100%, and that's part of the problem. So when Dave decided to do just a little bit of reorganizing his schedule, and Polly did some reorganizing of her schedule, they created more hours of overlap. So the team now has from 10 to noon and from 2 to 4, to 2 to 4 in the afternoon. They also have another hour where almost everybody is available. And that 79% and 9 in the morning, that's down to 64%. Nobody got asked to change when they work. Nobody got asked to come early or stay late. This is all their preference for working when they do. Now, what I recommend is that you create your visualization of your team's working hours by day. Especially if anybody on your team has small children and they are in a hybrid situation for school. I'm not sure where you guys are for opening schools. In Massachusetts, we're all over the map, literally. Some are hybrid, some are in person. Yeah, it's just kind of nuts. So you might have team members who are still facilitating their children learning on Monday and Tuesday or on Thursday and Friday, and every kid is home on Wednesday, right? So you will need to figure out how you can visualize your team's hours of overlap. And you might need to work by 20 or 30-minute segments. I have found that the more people have to facilitate their children, their dog, their parents, right? My father is 91. I call him every single day at 4 in the afternoon because he is in a place where for 6 months, no, I think longer, he did not get to see another human being. So I talk to him every single day because what else would I do? You have people on your team who have responsibilities outside of work. That does not mean that they cannot do the work. That means the team needs to flex a little bit to support them. So that's why you might actually break these hours of overlap down into 20 or 30-minute segments. Does it make the spreadsheet wider? Yeah, it does. It's an electronic spreadsheet. You can do this. So the next principle is to create transparency at all levels. And this is about the product, not what's happening in the team. So when Mark and I were putting this book together, he actually said to me, I've seen teams that are supposedly agile where nobody can see what anybody else is doing. So that's no transparency anywhere. Then they have transparency in the team. The sweet spot is full product transparency. So the larger your organization, the more you probably have programs, which are a single business deliverable with multiple teams that feed into that deliverable, you need full product transparency. Who is doing what on which part of the backlog? What kind of roadmaps do you have? Do you have any dependencies between teams? All that stuff. This is all about the information. So is there anything that your team members cannot see? Is there any information that is difficult to access? All of that stuff you really need to talk about. Now, I happen to really like at least some partial corporate transparency, and I'm not really an anarchist, but yeah, sometimes I play that role. And full corporate transparency often does not occur in very large organizations. There are a whole bunch of reasons for that. I'm not getting into it. But the more transparency you can create, at least about the product, the better off everyone will be. So the next principle is to create a culture of continuous improvement with experiments. I went in to teach an Agile workshop for a client. They had come from all their places around New England. We had a lovely hotel room. This is back when we all got together, and they all said, we're using this book, right? A particular book for our Agile approach. And I said, how's that working? And they said, the book is wrong. I said, it's entirely possible for the book to be wrong for you. And Agile is built on inspect and adapt, reflect and refine. If we're not reflecting on a regular basis, we are not actually using an Agile approach. So by the book and thinking that we've always done it this way, and that's going to be something that actually works for you for going on, that kind of gives me this horrible feeling of, do you know what the book is, and is the book never going to change, and all that stuff. I would much rather that you try something and do at least some kind of assessment of results or data. And then I am very big on experiments with defined metrics or expected results and feedback. Mark Kilby, my co-author, said, Johanna, I don't know anybody who has as many spreadsheets as you. So fine, right? As long as you're trying something and assessing what you see, you probably have at least enough continuous improvement with experiments to get going and to keep going and to get better as you go. Now, the best easy experiment is a board. So this particular team started off with a Scrum board. I'm not going to show you a Scrum board because, everybody knows what a Scrum board is. They experimented with a board on the left. And the reason they did that is because they said, we have all this work in progress. It keeps going back to the ready column. It's not really done. We put in done. It goes back to in progress. Everything is moving all over the board and very little is actually getting done. So what they realized is that they thought they had a ready column of a whole bunch of stories. And then they needed to do some analysis on those stories. You might say they should have done this in their planning. They did not. That's fine. They did code and unit test, and that included their code review. Because they tried to kind of pair on code and unit tests, which was really good. Then they had in test and then waiting for approval and done. Now, what they said was, this isn't really Agile. It kind of looks waterfall-y. I said, well, maybe it is waterfall-y, but could you move any of that analysis stuff more to the left so you have really ready stories? That analysis might come first and then you have ready? And they said, oh, maybe we could do that. So now they have a board that looks like the board on the right. They have stories to workshop and they have a WIP limit on that column. And then they have ready. So they know they want to take a look at these stories. Those are the stories ready to workshop. They have a limit on the ready column. They have a limit on on dev and unit test, and then a limit on system test, a limit on accept, and then done. Now, if you look at this particular board, it's a pretty full board. They cannot take any stories to workshop into ready. They can't move anything from ready to dev and unit test. They can't move anything from dev and unit test into system test. They can't move anything into accept because they need to start pulling from the right. So they did not get to this board on their own the very first time. They needed to experiment their way to the board. This I would not be surprised if they have now changed the board. I'm sure that they've changed the WIP limits by now, but this is what it was back when I worked with them. So boards are kind of the fastest and easiest experiment you can do. Now, pervasive communication at all levels. One of us who might have been a manager in a previous life used to think that I could say something once and everybody would remember it. Oh my God. Yeah, some of us were not too bright. However, I have learned and I know now that I need pervasive communication in various ways. It's not just enough to send an email or a Slack message or any other kind of a message. I need to say, here are the reasons why, and have a link to a document I might have written. I need to do a presentation. I might need to do any number of other things, but I need to repeat the message in various ways. And then some of us might have the problem of over communication. So far, I have not had that problem. I am kind of waiting for that problem. So, but some you might work with somebody who says, I'm telling you on Monday, this thing is going to happen on Friday. Tuesday, I'm telling you the same thing. Wednesday, same thing. Thursday, same thing. Friday, same thing. That kind of over communication is not that helpful. So let me talk about rich and natural communication. It turns out there are two kinds of communication theories. I find this hysterical that we don't actually know about communication. There are only theories about communication. One is rich, that says we have multiple kind of media. So we are in real time. So the more synchronous our communication, the more rich it is. And the more human and natural it is, the more natural. Yeah. As opposed to an avatar, right? So avatars might mimic humanity, but they are not human. So the more synchronous and the more facial expressions you can see, the more we have rich and natural communication. So asynchronous communication, we definitely need, and a lot of us actually need more asynchronous communication than we might have thought if we want to avoid this over meeting kind of a culture. And so you'll notice that we have all this real-time synchronous communication up there, and the effect of a dedicated chat back channel on the other distribution channels, that kind of pushes all the effectiveness up. So a dedicated chat back channel is if your team has Slack or Teams or any other kind of a text-based asynchronous communication that does not require an answer right away, that's the dedicated chat back channel. So the more you are dispersed, the more you are distributed, the more you need the dedicated chat back channel. So the fifth principle is assume good intent. Oh, I'm not looking at the chat. So do we have questions? Do I need to start and listen to questions? Oh, okay, fine. So assume, yeah, so not yet. I don't have any questions about this. Okay. So the fifth principle is assume good intent. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with a Satir congruence model. I found that this explained a whole bunch of stuff about my communication to me. So if we forget about ourselves, we placate other people. If we forget about the other person, we blame other people. If we balance the self, the other, and the context, then we can assume good intention. let me tell you a little bit of a funny story about myself, because yeah, let's go there. So several months ago, I think maybe even last year, I was taking a shower in the morning. It must have been probably on the weekend, and the light went out. At the same time that the light went out, my husband walked into the bathroom. Did I ask him what happened? No, I blamed him. I said, "What did you do to the lights?" Yeah. So, husbands and wives, we have a very special relationship. However, the more you are dispersed and the fewer real-time communications you have, the harder it is to assume good intent. So if you only have asynchronous communication, let me see if I can go back here. Oh, yeah. If you only have asynchronous communication without any kind of real-time, rich and natural communication with video, the easier it is for you to not assume good intent. It's just we are human. This is what we do. So think about how we can assume good intent and balance the self, the other, and the context. Now, let me talk about a project rhythm. I am a huge fan of a project rhythm in any kind of a project, and especially in an agile project. If you're using Scrum or an iteration-based approach to your agility, the the boundary of the time box, the iterations provide you that drumbeat, that rhythm. That's kind of the large rhythm. You also have other rhythms with the roadmaps and the project portfolio, but let's talk about the project right now. I also like continuous integration and at least internal continuous delivery. That might be a daily rhythm where you always have the world, the world, the product is always built and usable every single day. That kind of a rhythm really helps everybody understand what's going on. So you can use time boxes like that. However, you can also use a cadence of planning, demos, and planning on demand, which is in Flow. Oh, I didn't have one. Okay. So let me talk about a cadence of planning and demos. I have a client who I would never would never recommend what they do. This is what they do. They plan on Mondays and Thursday mornings for about an hour, maybe 30 minutes, mostly 30 minutes, maybe up to an hour, because they only plan for the next 2 or 3 stories that they're going to do. But what they call planning, I would also call analysis. They talk about the architecture, they draw pictures. So it's not just planning and estimation the way you might think about it in a Scrum project. It's more involved than that. They shape the work while they plan. If they realize they have a really big item, they might say, what's the first thing we can do to get us some more data about this? And that's what they do first. So they do this on Mondays and Thursdays. Every Wednesday at noon Eastern for this particular project, they always do a demo. They always record the demo. Anybody who wants to come comes. They get to see what has happened since the previous demo day, which is Wednesday. They always do a retrospective on Friday afternoon. I would never recommend you do a retrospective on Friday afternoon, but that's what they chose. So notice this is not normal. It's not a time boxed approach or an iteration based approach to an agile project. They are very successful. So they don't quite plan on just demand, but they use a cadence of planning, of demos, of retrospectives, and they are able to really have wonderful outcomes. People are very happy with their product now that they are working this way. I would not, I would get confused. However, they don't seem to get confused. So it doesn't matter what I think, right? It's all about them, not all about me. Now, let me talk about a culture of resilience. I have found that the more we understand about the people doing the work, right, that center thing where we communicate about the work, the personal and the person's growth, the more we have resilience in the team. So if we only communicate about work, we don't know enough about where people might have trouble with the work. We don't know if they need a little support from their team so they can take care of homeschooling or their parents, or might need to call my father every day at 4 o'clock. None of that stuff. They don't know anything about it. Now, if we do communicate about that, that's terrific. And if we only communicate about the non-work, that's not very helpful, because we need all of the communication to actually help us do the work. So the more communication about the work and our personal environments, the more resilience we can create. So if I need to get my refrigerator fixed on Wednesday, and you know what happens when you have a person come to the house, right? They say noon to 6, right? They're not going to tell you 12:30 p.m. No, they're going to say, here's a 4-hour, 6-hour window. Be ready. So if my team knows I could be called away at any moment, they're not surprised if I'm wearing my mask. They're not surprised if I run and get the doorbell. They're not surprised by any of this. So the more we understand about what people are doing, what the pulls on them are away from work, the more we can create a resilient team. And the more we know about what people want to do, the more we can offer pairing or mobbing to the people who want to learn something new. So this is a huge deal. Now, you might think that the last principle is default to collaboration. So you might think that it's more important to work solo. I have my work. I'm only going to do my work. I'm not going to worry about anybody else's work. I have not found that to be all that helpful. I have more found that pairing and other real-time collaboration works much better than solo work, even when we're all dispersed. And some teams are really doing well with mobbing. So I am a huge fan of pairing, swarming, and mobbing. Swarming is when the team says, we will all work on this item, but we will all do our thing. So if um, I'm going to use people on the call here. If Jay is a UI person, Jay would do the UI part. If Ron is the middleware person, Ron would do the middleware part. I'm the platform person because I have no taste in UI. I'm going to do the platform part. Maybe Eric is our tester. We would all go off and do our own thing. We would come back every, hour, maybe 90 minutes, reconnect with each other, say where we are. When one of us is done, we offer to work with any of the other people who might want support or just to pair. So that's the going away and coming back together is what makes this different from mobbing. But the more hours of overlap we have, the more opportunities we have to collaborate. And that's something that is really, really helpful. I find that the more we want to pair and mob and maybe even swarm and really, really bring people together to collaborate, not cooperate, collaborate. That means we can actually get much more work done. Now, the reason I really like collaboration and working together is because it's so much more efficient. Let me introduce you to the words resource efficiency and flow efficiency. The wonderful book, This is Lean, Resolving the Lean Paradox. I believe that that's the title, by the two Swedes, talked about resource efficiency and flow efficiency. Our organizations are too often built on resource efficiency. And the larger the organization you work with, the more you are probably trying to work in resource efficiency. That's where the work assignment arrives. You do your part, you hand off to the next person. they do their part, hands off to the next person, they do their part, hands off to the next person, etc., until you get the finished work. However, what is Agile based on? Flow efficiency, where we work as the team. So what's very interesting about resource efficiency is that it focuses on the people. In flow efficiency, we focus on the item or the work. The more you can work in flow efficiency as a collaborative team, the easier your Agile approach will be. Does not matter which Agile approach it is. Any Agile approach is much, much easier when you work in flow efficiency. And the culture of the organization way too often is based on resource efficiency. That's a different talk. So if you are not sure about what to do about this, create a value stream map, especially if you don't have a lot of hours of overlap. A value stream map can really help your team see your team system. So here's how you create a value stream map. Notice that the work time is above the line and wait time is below the line. So whenever anybody works on an item, you include the duration right underneath that. So Jay works on item 1 for 2 hours, and then as soon as he says to Gopal, "I'm ready. Are you available?" And Gopal says, "Yeah, sure, I'm ready." He takes that item. There's no wait time because he's ready, waiting for the work. However, when Gopal is done, I am not available to take the work. So there's a wait duration until I can actually start on that new item. So that's how you create your value stream map. This is a generic map you would fill in with how you figured this out for your team. You map the stream that you have, not the stream that you want. And notice that if you add up all the work time and the wait time, that's your total cycle time. If you are having trouble estimating anything at all, it's probably because you are using relative estimation and not cycle time. Relative estimation does not account for the delays in the team. Cycle time does account for the delays in the team. And especially in distributed teams, you probably have delays, not because anybody is bad, not because anybody is wrong, but because we're not all in literally the same room. And then, unless you have a WIP limit, work in progress limit of 1 for the entire team, you're not all working on the same things. So that's how the value stream map can really help you understand what is happening in your team so that you can then support everybody's work to create a great outcome. Oh, I wanted to note this. I often show when I've been teaching a lot of my my Agile workshops online, and I've been putting up this typical Agile team value stream map. And the last 4 workshops, every single team has said to me, "I want to know what team actually gets anything done in just over a day, because it takes us 4 days to finish anything." And when we look at our wait times, we are waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. So yeah. So I hope that I am wrong for you. I hope that your cycle time is this optimistic. But my experience with all my workshops these days are I am being very optimistic. This actually comes from a real team, but back when we were all in the office. So yeah, fine. So I really like to think about how can we, as an Agile team, optimize for flow efficiency, especially because we are so focused on everybody is home. We're going to be that way for a while. We all have stuff kind of pulling us away from the work. How can we figure out where we can optimize for flow efficiency? So I have some links there that you can take a look at later, and I will be sending the slides to Jay, to Gopal, Ron, whatever, all you guys. So let me talk about my near future predictions. I think that remote work is always going to remain an option. I think that the days of us all going back to the office, I think that that's not going to happen. And I think that we will learn to use asynchronous work better. I am a huge fan of asynchronous work. I think that anything we can write so that other people can read and digest before the meeting allows us to have many fewer meetings, or at least make them shorter. And organizations will fund personal setups that work for each of us. Now, let me talk about a couple things that are not on this slide. A lot of when Mark and I wrote From Chaos to Successful Distributed Agile Teams, we talked about three kinds of teams. We talked about dispersed teams, these nebulas, that's where we are now. And then there are two kinds of teams where some people are near each other or in particular locations, and some people are not. So let me talk about the satellite team. A satellite team has the bulk of the team in one physical location and a couple of other people who are not in that physical location. Satellite teams are very difficult to maintain. Another kind of not quite dispersed team that we have now is the cluster team. That's a couple of people in one physical location, a couple of people in another physical location, a couple of people in the third physical location, maybe one or two other people in their own location. Now, the cluster team mimics the dispersed team. And if you assume that everybody is, if everybody is not in the office, then you need to have a dispersed team meeting, a dispersed team approach to work, you will succeed. However, that's much more excuse me. That's much more doable with a cluster team. It's really hard with the satellite team. And what are some large companies planning for now? Satellite teams. On Monday and Tuesday, people's 1, 2, 3, and 4 will be in the office. People 5, 6, 7, and 8 will be in their homes. That's an example of a satellite team where a bulk of the people are in the office and 4 other people. I'm not very good at doing pictures with my hands. 4 other people are in their own offices. What happens to the people when the team is physically together? They forget about the other people. Not because they're mean or nasty. No. It's out of sight, out of mind. I don't know if anybody ever said that to you. My mother used to say that to me. She never used to worry about me when I was at college. But when I came home from college, I had to deal with the curfew. Yeah, all that stuff. So even when I had my own apartment, unless I was actually talking to her, she never really worried about what I did. Out of sight, out of mind. This is exactly the same problem for satellite teams. So when we think about moving back to the office, think about if you are supposed to be on a satellite team with the bulk of the people in the office and a bunch of people not in their own locations. Really think about how you can either turn that into a cluster team or leave you all dispersed, where you come into the office all together to work together for some particular outcome. So really think about that. So these are the 8 principles. And I really hope that we stay in touch. And because you will have all of these resources, I think I can certainly I can stop this share and start to answer questions. Okay. Oh, Sheila says she's been working with cluster teams for a long time. Yeah. Have all of them working remote on the same day and all in the office at the same time. Exactly. That's my experience also.
Yeah, this is Sheila. Yeah, I've seen people do this. Okay, you work from home on Tuesdays and you guys work from home on this day. For me, I mean, back in 2007, I think, I just had all of my team, I said, listen, I know that you guys are commuting a long way. Everybody work remote on Fridays. We all work remote Fridays, and this is the way we'll communicate on Friday. And because either you're in the office or you're not, I don't like, I agree with you. I was going to ask that question and you answered it right at the end.
Yeah. So I mean, my daughter works as a product owner for a local Boston company, and she's supposed to be in the office on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then again on Thursday. And only half of the team is going to be in the office at any given time. And I said to her, do you know about the research for this? Do you know how bad that is? So she said, well, no, point me to the research. So I did. So they're not planning on going. They were originally going to come back in July. I don't think that's happening. Well, maybe it is, right? But it's very unpredictable.
Yeah, and when we moved offices several years ago, what happened was there wasn't enough space in the one office. And so I wound up with some people on my teams in another office in New York City, some in New Jersey. So I had 2 different offices in New York City and one in New Jersey. But I have to say that even with that, I still didn't want them switching remote days.
Well, I think not having predictability about when people will be where, I think that's also difficult. I would rather have a satellite team or a cluster team and know when they will be where and be able to plan for that, rather than where it's Tuesday, where is Johanna? Right. That's very hard.
Hey, and this is Jay. I just want to let everyone know, if you take yourself off mute, I think, we have a small enough crowd here. You can ask the question and everything. And so just go ahead and ask questions.
Yeah.
I have
Joanna,
a question. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, please go ahead.
No, I've already been talking. Your turn.
I just want to get your thoughts on something that I've been thinking about. Many of us, we are in the transformation space, right? We don't go in and try to keep business as usual. It's all about transformation to take the teams, organizations, and the company to the next level and many levels above that. And it involves cultural change. And usually, the thing that I was thinking of is the employee, satisfaction or employee engagement index that we look at. With the remote teams and the way in which we are remote 100% these days, have you seen the employee index or any of those measurements with respect to employee change, or how do you see that play into this overall remote? Because I do have some strong thoughts in terms of how much remote we should be, but that's for another time. We have a panel coming up next month for that in this meetup. So,
all right. So let me first say that when Mark and I wrote the book, what we offered as advice was that you get together as a team at least once a quarter, so that you can reconnect physically together, eat together, maybe do some other stuff together, certainly work together. Nobody can do that right now. So what we're doing right now is kind of a caricature of remote. So let me just say that. I can say that a lot of my clients who are remote by design, who used to get together, actually have very high employee engagement data. They also have a different kind of a culture than a lot of the large organizations that are having a lot of trouble actually doing an agile transformation. So I just wrote these other 3 books called Modern Management Made Easy, and I talk a lot about the culture there, and a culture of a lot of management rules and processes often does not lead to a lot of engagement. And the more managers want to monitor what the people are doing as opposed to asking for outcomes, the more managers are supposed to do all of the doing performance evaluations and performance management. All of that stuff really creates disengagement. So I think that there's remote work, and then there's internal processes, and because we are so we have not had a chance to get together and work together in person on a regular basis, even if we want to be remote. I think that that's coloring all the other stuff. I mean, every time I see somebody say, I'm going to count keystrokes or count the hours that you work on this, little part of me dies. So I don't know how to tell you. So I think that right now we don't have good data because we are in this strange circumstance. Maybe that's the way to put it.
Johanna, I love that you brought up rhythm as project rhythm as one of your principles.
Yeah.
I've had it as a principle, as an agile principle, actually. But I haven't done any research into why. I feel it. I can feel it on my teams. But I haven't done research into why. Have you done research into why? What is it about rhythm that is so powerful?
So, do you know about the progress principle by Amabile and somebody, Teresa Amabile, Amabile? I might be saying her name wrong. And the progress principle is the name of the book.
No.
Yeah. So what they say is that if we don't ever, that we want to get things done as humans. Some of us want to get things done so we can cross them off our list. Some of us want to get things done so we can go to the next thing because this one is kind of boring. Also me. But I think that the rhythm is about making progress towards something. That especially, this is one of the reasons I really love one-day stories. That if we can finish a story as a team every single day, we make that rhythm, right? If we always have a build every day, we see our progress. So for me, this business of rhythm is bound up with progress. And I think that there's something about in the progress principle and rhythm for almost any work that really keeps me going. Yeah. Making progress in meaningful work. Thank you, Emil. I hope I said your name properly. But for me, that's it. So I can tell you that when I'm writing a book, I feel very different than when I'm finishing a book. Because when I'm writing a book, I write 1,000 words every day. I just keep writing, right? And eventually I will finish. Eventually I'm ready for my editors and my layout and all that stuff. When I get to the very end, it's more like a waterfall project, and oh my God, I die. Yeah, I really have trouble with the end.
So Joanne, I have a question. This is Jay. So,
Yeah.
so let's just assume that now we've gone through this COVID thing, we've worked remote. Hey, and we're doing pretty good. We're getting stuff done. or we figured stuff out. We're going to go back to the other way. Really? What are we going to do?
So I am not a fan of all remote work all the time. I am also not a fan of all in office work all the time. And if I had my way, I would actually ask the team, when do you want to be in the office? When do you want to be remote? As a team, right? That would be my first request. And maybe everybody has a different need. That's fine. But I would really, I just don't see, I don't see that this is sustainable, what we're doing right now. We never get together with anybody at all, right? I work with people online. I work with people via Zoom. But when Mark and I co-wrote the book together. We wrote every single word together. Excuse me. And I found that when we did separate to do every so often we separated to do to do images, that when we came back together, we had to reconnect. So I worry about the fact that we are not reconnecting with our colleagues. I really worry about this. And I don't know, I don't have an answer for that. All I know is that we have to be able to work together at times, and not just through Zoom or any other tool. We need to get together in the same room. However, I don't see why we want to ever all be back in the office unless it's easy for us to do that. Did that make sense?
Yes, I think I think every team and every company and everything's team oriented now. I agree with you. They have to figure out what works best for them, and then to me, it's a team agreement. It's a working team agreement, of how we're going to work together. And then if I look at the portfolio or level or something, it's the same thing, right? I know we've got these platforms and work we have to do, and the workflow. So how are we going to do this in the future? Because now we have, in my opinion, better options.
I think so too. And so the last time I facilitated a project portfolio meeting, oh, the managers are so I'm just going to say this, pissy. Why do we all have to get together? Why can't we do this asynchronously? And I said to them, it's not about the moving of the cards and sorting the cards in any way. It's about the discussion that we need to have about what is valuable and what is not valuable right now. So that particular workshop was a workshop I facilitated in person, but now they are using Miro boards for their work. They totally understand how to do this. I think they started with Jamboards and then they moved to Miro. So we need to be able to collaborate, and if we're together or we're separated by distance, as long as we are in real time, we can actually do that.
Joanna, I have a question. Actually, you brought up an interesting case where you said, here's a team that really didn't have a good process. They were meeting on Mondays and Thursdays, and they would have the Friday afternoon retro. I had a similar experience, and I just want to get your comment. How did you feel that team, because I think ultimately you're looking at the result, right? And how did that team kind of connect with their customers? Because in our situation, I think the kind of the odd way that they made things work actually endeared them to the business and to the people who were using their products, because they were actually being flexible around that, those people's schedules. And they got used to it. The team got used to seeing a demo every, Thursday at 1 o'clock or whatever the time was. And They got used to the retro times, even if it was an odd, what I would consider an odd hour late in the day. What is your comment on how that flexibility also leads to kind of a good harmony between your customer and the team itself?
Oh, that's the reason this particular team had their demos on, I believe it was noon on Wednesdays, is because that was the best time for the business colleagues to watch the demo. And so, and because it was every single week, you could put it on your calendar and not have to remember when it was. So I use 1 week planning. I use for my work. I use Flow inside of a 1 week time box, and I find that for me this works really well. Not all teams can do this, but if you have a cadence, this is that rhythm thing again, right, Ron? A cadence of demos, then you set people's expectations. You put it on the calendar. You kind of can forget it. Right, you do it, right? You don't forget to do it, but you always invite people in, and that's what's really wonderful.
So, Joanna, I have a question on the overlap that you were talking about. So I want to go back to the overlap, and I really like that whole idea of coming up with a scheduled overlap. So I'm trying to understand, when you're talking about that, are you saying that the members of the team would kind of block those times, not necessarily have anything set up for those times, but would have those times blocked as free times for us to get together if we need to? Or is this blocked off and this is the team's going to be on a Zoom meeting at these times on a regular basis?
Well, I'm going to share my screen again. Is that okay with everybody? Because I think it's easier if I talk to it with the keynote, with the presentation. So I'm gonna do a little, oh, screwed that up. Let me try this again. Maybe I can get to this. Okay, I believe I can share. I believe I'm smart enough now to share my screen properly. So I would, Sheila, I would not say that this is necessarily Zoom time. Look at any of these 100%. But these are times that the team could decide who would work together with whom. And especially if you're mobbing, you might say, starting at 10, we're going to mob for 2 hours, which I think is actually a long time to mob, excuse me, without a break. So you might say, we'll set up a Zoom, but our Zoom will be for 2 hours, and we'll all take a break at about the 45-minute mark, or maybe the 35-minute mark, and then another break a little later at 35 minutes, and then finish. So it's not so much that you are committing to a particular meeting, but that you are available to the team so that the team can work together.
Okay, yeah, so that's, yeah, so you're saying like that everybody should block off this time, not schedule any other meetings, have this time available for the team.
Yeah, and I think that the larger the organization, the more difficult that can be for any given team. I think that there are a lot of, in my experience with my large clients, that people feel pulled in many, many directions. Even if they are primarily on a team, they always have other meetings, other commitments, other interest from other people. I think that makes it quite difficult.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Johanna, with the discussion that you had about rhythm in the group and how it affects efficiency, got late to the presentation, so I don't know if you discussed the Eliyahu Goldratt's book, The Goal and Theory of Constraints, and how that applies to the to your work and your belief on organizing work.
So I did not talk about the goal. I find that thinking in flow efficiency and thinking about the goal for me are highly complementary. So I think if you prefer theory of constraints, so flow efficiency does not talk about elevating the constraint, but flow efficiency does talk about how can we make the work, how can we get to the outcome that we want better, not necessarily faster, but eliminating all the wait states. That's how it's similar to theory of constraints. I find that theory of constraints, lean thinking, thinking in flow efficiency, that's all very interrelated. I think of them as very complementary. And if you prefer theory of constraints, that's totally fine. Did that make sense?
I noticed the similarity, so I was wondering about that. Also, one of the things that is somewhat of an issue with management's thinking of efficiency and workflows is the at least the lip service to the Toyota production system, and how it works in software development, whereas not even in Japan do all the companies, all the manufacturers go along with the Toyota production system, especially the electronics manufacturers like Sony and Canon prefer a system called Seru, which is similar to cell manufacturing, in which units are organized not as an assembly line, because what they're producing is not mass produced of a large number of nearly identical products, but they have a pretty component based system where they're assembling products in small batches. And it sounds more like the sort of thing that software teams would be doing, but now, especially with distributed teams, and what you're describing here, the work, we may have yet another form of production for organizing work units, and we should not be relying, or managers should not be going along with this Toyota production system, because what we do is not a mass-produced, highly, very formal, well-defined system, because it's all custom work basically. So we can't go along with the assembly line model of production.
So I think that a lot of managers do not realize how much manufacturing thinking has gotten into the organization. My Modern Management Made Easy books talk all about this. So if software is learning, right? Any high-tech product development requires learning. I actually had this conversation with my dad yesterday. I said to him, we in the Agile projects, we don't assume we know all the requirements up front. How can that be? He said, we always know all the requirements up front. I said, Dad, when was the last time you actually wrote some software? Oh, mid-70s. Okay, fine. So it's more complex now, and we're solving different problems on highly complex machines, and we don't know all the requirements up front. So he said, we were talking actually about the Massachusetts COVID site. Well, yeah. I also hope I get to live as long as my dad, Adam. So I found that when I explained to him, I said, have you ever heard the phrase, you gave me what I asked for, but it's not what I need now. I realize it's not what I want. He said, of course. I said, that's the problem with software development. So the more our managers, especially our senior managers, think in terms of manufacturing, the less they are thinking in terms of learning. Software development is all about the learning we do as a team to actually create the product. And that is a new and different way of thinking. Those of us with gray hair might have been thinking that all along, but yeah, I can see Eric nodding. But yeah, I mean, for some reason, our managers don't get it. So, well, they don't yet get it. So, Alfonso, I guess what I'm saying to you is the more managers think in terms of manufacturing, the more they think that resource efficiency is useful. And the more they think in terms of learning, the more they think that flow efficiency is useful. And this is the problem. This is a challenge. So all of you trying to do agile transformations, this is the nugget that you need to be able to find the way into the senior leadership team, because they actually work as a team. They work in flow efficiency as a senior leadership team, right? They would not make really big decisions without each other. They don't. So that we need to somehow make this work throughout the organization.
And the problem isn't thinking the way manufacturers do, but that they think that the manufacturing process is well designed up front rather than on an ad hoc basis, and how to maximize the flow through that model instead of, well, we've designed everything like an automobile up front and all the parts are well designed. We just have to put everything together. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it does not. Yeah, you should read my Modern Management Made Easy books. So, all right.
Thanks.
Or maybe you already read it, so you don't need to. There was a question, Dimitri asked, question about hours of overlap. How would you make it fair for everyone if the team is distributed between US West Coast and India, where overlaps are going to be inconvenient for at least one party? So I would say you don't have a sufficient number of hours of overlap, and I would say don't have meetings. Right? This is where, why would you make it so challenging? I mean, to be literally honest, you don't have a team, you don't have an agile team that can collaborate. You don't. I realize, Dimitri, everybody thinks you have a team. They call it a team, but it's not a team because there's no way that you can all get together and actually be able to collaborate. So now that you have a bunch of people, can you have a feature team in India? Can you have a feature team on the West Coast? And then every so often they have to intersect, probably with asynchronous collaboration, right? Writing is a really good thing, but yeah, there was something on Twitter, Dimitri, that I answered yesterday. Somebody said, how did they put it? Well, you'll have to look back at my Twitter feed. Somebody said we have teams with distributed all over the world, and I said you don't have a team, right? I mean, you just don't. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Joanna, I'm a big believer that once you go over that precipice of whatever those hours are, 8, 12 hours, you have whole teams and geographies in the world. You have to have the feature teams with the product owners, Scrum. You have to have the whole team that can get the work done. Now, you could have someone that can coordinate it across the different time zones that can help. And then Europe kind of helps middle of the piece, right? But I believe in you that once you start distributing the teams too much, where the time zones get interfered with the workflow, then you're not helping anybody. You're a disservice to the workflow.
So there are co-pilots and ambassadors. So co-pilots are people who are kind of in future teams, the product owners will try and talk to each other at some point. Those are co-pilots. Ambassadors are somebody takes takes information from one team to another team and then back again. I find that whether or not you're doing co-pilots or ambassadors, those are thankless jobs, just horrible jobs.
I am laughing.
Yeah. Eric actually said, yeah, think big, start small, learn fast. Yeah, totally. Eric, are you and I twins separated by distance or birth or something?
We probably have some of the same influences and experiences and gray hairs.
Yeah.
But when it comes to value, everybody knows about customer value, but learning is also value, and that's why in these big enterprise agile environments, that there's always going to be big things coming down the pike, and part of the job is to break it up into stuff where you can make progress every day, as you said. And in the first phases of the project, it's going to be learning value more than customer value. You got to figure out how your plan is wrong and how to fix it.
Yeah, I agree. I saw the question for, can we see the how do you feel about remote work? And I believe if I take this off there. So let me see if I can bring up the chat again. Oh God. I don't know why Zoom does not understand what I want it to do, what I want it to do. So this is the feeling slide. I believe that you can all see that.
Yeah, Microsoft, Joanna, we called that a feature. It's production already.
Yeah. So I really like I need more pajamas. I think that's hysterical. But I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff about freedom and free and focused, independent, culinary. That's interesting. Enjoy being at home. Zoom fatigue, right? Comfortable, focused on my own. I like it. So, and then there's all kinds of stuff about disconnected and isolated and lonely and tiring and Zoom fatigue and Zoom. I mean, I think that we all have something, if that makes sense. There's good parts and bad parts, and I think it's really hard to say what the right approach is. Mark and I went in the early months of the pandemic. If it's okay, SRITI. I'm sure that that's your first initial and last name or something, or maybe it's your first name, Shriti. Is it okay if I stop the share so I can see everybody?
Oh yeah, and Shriti is the first name. Thank you.
Oh, good, thank you. Okay, so so in the first few days, the first few months of the pandemic, Mark and I were giving all these talks, and I said, we both said actually, that we thought that remote work was something we could offer people, right? That there were ways to do it well. And we never expected a pandemic, right? We never expected the world would be plunged immediately. So, I mean, Mark has been working remote for, I think, the last 15 years. And I have a lot of experience, but not just remote experience. And we never expected the world to be like this. We just, I mean, who would expect this? I feel like who expects the Spanish Inquisition, right? It's just mind-boggling that and it's been going on for a year now, right? I came home in I believe in late February, early March last year, and I have not gotten on an airplane since. I barely left my house. Yeah, exhausted. Yeah, Monica says, even if I did say free and independent, which is nice, I also should have added exhausted. Yeah, I think it's, oh, and the extra load of childcare, housework, and additional support. So I cannot tell you the number of women I know who are no longer working because somebody had to take care of the kids so somebody else could work. If um, I actually said to my husband, my long-suffering husband, that if our kids were home, I'm not sure if I would still be at home. I might be in jail for murder, right? I mean, I think it's anybody who takes care of their kids all day and tries to work. I think you're extraordinary.
So Joanna, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't you see the latest study that almost all the people that were laid off to COVID and had issues and problem were women?
Yep. Yep. And I, Monica, what are you doing awake? I thought I recognized you. You should be asleep. Oh, these are your current working hours. Okay, fine. You're sharing work with Scott. Yeah, I don't get it. So yeah, Jay, it's all the people who are not all the people, but so many women are just have they cannot do it. It's not possible, right? Anybody with small children, anybody with children who have any kind of not quite, I wouldn't say special needs, but it's not even special. Just yeah. Um oh, excuse me. Small children who need more attention. Yeah. Excuse me. There. Well, that was embarrassing. Oh well. Yeah. What can you do?
Yeah, you're human, but I do want, we have to close because we're at the end of our time together, even though it was special. I do want to thank Miss Joanna Rothman, Mrs. And thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. It was wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you.
Well, you are welcome.
You're welcome.
May I say one thing?
Sure.
I'm offering a writing workshop that starts in April. Details on my website. I'm offering a consulting cohort workshop that starts in March. So if you are a consultant and you want better clients and more money, you should join us. If you want to increase your writing skills, please join us. Okay, I'm done with my commercial.
Cool. Yeah, and then and we'll publicize that as well as we send out everything. So we'll get that text. But thank you everyone else for joining us. The recording will become available and we'll send it out. I'm a little behind because I do have a job to do with clients. So be patient. We'll send everything out. And again, thank you, Joanna. Thank you everyone else for attending. And I really had a good time. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to say auf Wiedersehen. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.